Conflict is inevitable in life. It's when it gets solidified into a pattern of I'm right and you're wrong, and especially when it gets the moral judgment of I'm good and you're bad, then it becomes a serious and basic antagonism that can result in conflict.
And it has inherent in it the capacity to escalate.
That's right. It's very easy to escalate because I'm no longer dealing with persons, I'm dealing with you bad objects over there. And that in turn gets turned backward.
So this
is a reciprocal escalation.
This is essentially a very simple mechanism for how conflict occurs, how it escalates.
It's very simple, and in my estimation, very true, that this is the way that conflict escalates.
Okay. What's the role of conflict resolution? How do you begin the process of de-escalating, resolving, intervening?
First of all, and this is an aspect I haven't mentioned before, first of all, it's necessary that people be willing to sit down in the same room. That was true in the Belfast situation, you brought that out. And it's true in the other situations. Sometimes progress can be made when they're not in the same room, but I feel that's pretty much a necessary fact that they be willing to face each other. Then that gives the facilitator opportunity to understand each in the way that I've described. It gives the facilitator, well, a second aspect of it, a second learning, is that the kind of conflicts we described as escalating may make conflict almost inevitable unless there is a facilitative person present and unless the contending parties are willing for that facilitative person to be present. That, for example, was true at Camp David. It's what led to its success. I think when the facilitator shows understanding of a group, that helps the feuding group, the other hostile group, to develop some understanding too. It was, to take an example from Camp David, Sadat and Begin at one point, near the beginning of the conference, were really at each other's throats verbally. There was just no agreeing, contradicting each other and so on. President Carter couldn't calm the storm, so he simply took notes during that interchange. And when they were finished, he said, "Now I think it would be useful to go over the issues on which there was strong difference of feeling and opinion." And he went over it in a cool fashion, outlining the objective points on which they differed. Well, that's a very facilitative thing to do because it helps each to understand a little bit, oh, I see, the other was saying such and such, and I do differ, but the differences become clarified and objective and real instead of dead ends of emotion and hatred and vituperation. So by that kind of a facilitative process embodied in an individual or individuals, that groups can move toward greater understanding and greater accommodation to each other, and often toward reconciliation.
Do you believe that the provision of the type of facilitation that is necessary is within the capability of our resources as a society?
Very definitely. To mention one thing about the Belfast situation, we obviously, by dealing with that small group, didn't make a dent in the Belfast fighting and so on. But as one of the citizens of Belfast said afterward, if there had been a group like that on every block in Belfast, that would have made a difference, and that would have made a difference. And you might ask, but where would the facilitators come from? It wouldn't be difficult at all to immediately have hundreds of facilitators ready who are experienced in this kind of thing. It wouldn't take more than a few months to train others to be facilitative. So that we're not talking about an impossible pie-on-the-sky proposal. If the public will is ready for this kind of technological, attitudinal, social advance, it would not be too difficult to implement it.
We've demonstrated our national will at providing for the common defense. We've demonstrated the capacity that we have to focus our energies on the technological investment, the marshaling of the best and the brightest in our society to think their way through the necessary problems involved in weapon systems, in their deployment. Why hasn't our society done as good a job in thinking through the application of these insights from the broader social and behavioral sciences and putting them to work with the same single-mindedness of purpose?
I think it's simply a lack of readiness in our culture. There was a time when science was very young and technology very young, when it was scoffed at. You couldn't possibly make an engine that would lift a plane off the ground, for example. I feel that society then became ready to adopt scientific technology, industrial technology and the like. We're not sufficiently educated, we're somehow not sufficiently ready to adopt social technology. And I'm not sure that I can... well, one reason for that is that we have become so invested in material technology that we can't believe that anything that has to do with attitudes could be of any importance. Only gradually and slowly are we recognizing that perhaps advances in material technology may have pretty well run their course, that unless we can make equal advances on the social front, it will simply lead to our own destruction.